So if you want to get to seven figures in your 20s, the easiest, clearest path to do that is to find one incredibly amazing thing that you can sell and deliver upon that is at the higher end of the market. One thing that you can do incredibly well on the high end. Here's why this is important. If you do the mathematics, if we want to get to $1 million, we should break the pencil and pen out and do some arithmetic. If I sold one thing to one person and the price tag was $1 million, there's your $1 million right there. Practically 0%. It's unlikely you're going to do that. Now on the flip side though, selling 1 million people a $1 thing, that's equally unlikely. So what you want to do is you want to run these scenarios here, okay? $100,000. If I sold 10 people a $100,000 thing, then I could get to $1 million. And if I sold one person a month, I could do that in 10 months and then take a 2-month vacation, right? So that's a way to get to $1 million. Is that likely? Probably not likely, but we're getting closer. Whenever you come up with your number, whether it's we're gonna sell 100 people a $10,000 thing, or we're gonna sell 1,000 people a $1,000 thing, then the question becomes, how do I find those people? And that is a great question. The first thing is even asking it and sitting down and getting a clarification yourself is gonna help you more than any YouTube video or podcast you could ever listen to. Because you're literally gonna start thinking, okay, if I could only sell to 1,000 people, where do I think those 1,000 people would hang out? When you look at the whole market, you don't look at any particular specific thing. You think very impersonal. But if you say, my target is 1,000 people, where do they hang out? What you're going to discover is premium buyers hang out in different places than regular buyers hang out. I'll give you a perfect example of this. Podcasts. There are two types of people that listen to podcasts. Very successful people and very broke people. And I love it when markets get commingled. And here's how we know successful people listen to podcasts. You ask them, hey, what do you do on a daily basis? And they'll say, I listen to podcasts. So one of your strategies to get 1,000 people to pay you whatever amount of money is to get on podcasts that those 1,000 people listen to. Getting on a podcast and closing 5 people every time you get on a podcast at the end of it, that's relatively easy. That's much more manageable for anybody to do, whether you're a beginner or a pro. Because if you get on 20 podcasts over the next year, which would be a podcast every other week, and each podcast produced a total of 5 clients for you, and each client paid you $10,000, you see where I'm going with this, right? That's $50,000 per podcast. Then how many podcasts will we do to get to $1 million? You get what I'm saying here, right? So podcasts are one place where people hang out that are typically more successful than most that you can target. In-person events are a gold mine for 2 reasons. One is we only need a few people to make $1 million, as we've established. And those people go to events. Those people show up to try to get better. Successful people are the most likely people to show up at events to try to get better. So if you show up, you make a personal connection here, you're gonna have a lot of impact. I hope you see the pattern. Everybody wants to be this amazing marketer that doesn't talk to anybody and does it all impersonally over the internet with these complicated funnels and all that kind of stuff. But the reality is most people make their first $1 million nose to nose, toes to toes. They go very deep with a few people, they create connections, they don't rely on all this crazy impersonal marketing yet, and then they use that success to build the impersonal marketing. Because then they can get on these funnels and they can say, I made such and such money and I did such and such thing and I helped this person and that person, and they have the confidence. But they started locally. A few people, very hands-on. More than anything, that's how people make $1 million. Now, they typically don't do it in their 20s. Why? It's not because you're dumb in your 20s and you can't do it. It's because they try everything else in their 20s first, and when that fails, then in their 30s. So they do this because they're stubborn in their 30s when they could have done it in their 20s. But again, I'm just going to tell you, if we can focus on a few people that spend the most money and we overwhelm them with value, that's the easiest way in your 20s that you're going to get to $1 million. So a question I often will get then is, okay, if events, for example, or podcasts, for example, are the place to go, obviously we can't show up on every podcast or every event. We have to be somewhat purposeful and strategic of where we show up. So let's just say you're going to go for live events as an example. Hopefully you're in a big city. Because if you're in Iowa, where I was from, the nearest place you might be able to show up is Chicago or St. Louis, Minneapolis, maybe in those areas. That's a lot of effort to get to those places. If you're in a bigger city, I hate to break it to you, but if you want to look at successful people, the number one predictor of somebody's success is the zip code that they live in. I know, I don't like it either, but I can ignore reality and it's still going to be reality. So get yourself to a big city as fast as you possibly can is the recommendation. I don't know how useful that is to you, but one of the reasons is if you're in big cities, in Los Angeles, where I live, there's 16 events that are happening every single hour. I could randomly show up to a location and there's probably 5 millionaires hanging out there in that moment. And I could just pick the money up off the ground that they dropped and I could be successful more so than if I killed myself in Iowa trying to be successful. So, but even in Iowa or even in any place that you are, there are certain types of events that people go to that are successful because successful people go to events because that's where connections and relationships occur. Successful people typically get there because of their network more so than their knowledge base. And so the sooner you can get in these rooms, the more you can start to understand how to navigate these rooms. The more you can navigate these rooms, the more deals come to you. I hate to break it to you, but you can be average and know somebody and get rich quicker that way than know everything, but know nobody to open a door for you. So that's how we want to do. So any event that we can get into where the people in that room are higher achievers, that's the kind of the litmus test of where you want to factor into. So where do high achievers go? How can I be in that room? What podcasts do high achievers listen to in my niche? How can I find a way to get on those podcasts? So now let's say you're in the room or you're on the podcast. How do you get people from knowing who you are to wanting to do business with you? That's the next logical question there. And it's a very good question. And the easiest way, especially when you're starting out, is to make them feel really awesome when they talk to you. What does that mean? So first of all, you don't know enough about persuasion and communication yet to command an audience, to take them from point A to point B, where you're building the story along the way and engaging them and fascinating them and making them say, whoa, that's a person that I want to do business with. You're probably not there yet. So you do it the other way. You do it through conditioning. What happens is if people feel really good around you, they will attribute that feeling to you. So all you got to do is make them feel really good in your proximity, and then you will massively increase the likelihood that you can do business with them. So how do you make them feel really good hanging out with you? You ask them questions about themselves that make them feel good when they give you the answers. And that's really easy to learn. It's not normal because most people don't know how to do that, only because the conditioning is to always talk about yourself, always make it about you, make yourself front and center. That's the only limitation that stops people. But it's really easy once you get past that. Put yourself in the passenger seat and make them the star of the movie. And then they'll be like, man, I like that kid. Why do I like that kid? I don't know why. It makes me feel good. What they don't understand is you make them feel good because you take a fascination in the areas of their life that they just can't wait to talk about with people. And that's more than anything, the easiest way to open up a door to start doing business is allowing people to feel really good about some part of themselves when they talk to you. And naturally, they will then also attach to that a liking to you with feeling good about conversating on the topics that you navigate them towards. How do I make people open up in ways where naturally as they talk about themselves, they also attribute to me and they like me? And that's a great question. It starts off very basic. What you want to do is you want to find the inspiration that got them started with what they're doing today. So when you find out what they do, you're like, oh, cool. How did you get started with that? It's not the question itself that matters the most. It's the follow-up. You have to really listen to what they say. Pick up on the one thing that you can notice in their voice that gets them a little extra excited and ask a follow-up question about that. What you're really trying to do here is uncover the question that nobody else is asking them, but should be asking them. Because then they'll say, oh my God, this person is really listening to me and what I'm saying right now. And so the opening question just gets them to open up. And they'll give you the answer they give everybody else typically. So what made you want to start with X? And they'll say, well, once upon a time, and then they'll run a script. And then in that script, you're listening and hearing that one stress on that one word or that one emotion that they add to it in the story. And then you follow up with that. You say, oh, really? So tell me more about blank. It seems like that really excites you. And they're like, oh, how did they know that really excited me? Well, I mean, it's pretty obvious if you're listening, but when they're like, oh, wow, he really is paying it, and then they will open up more. And it's a feedback loop. When they open up on the next question, they get excited about a certain part of that. So then you ask them more. Here's what will happen if you do this right. They will become aware a little too late that they've been dominating the conversation. And they won't even be aware of it. If you really do this right, they won't even realize that they've been talking the whole time. And then they'll all of a sudden recognize it. And then they'll feel a little embarrassed. They'll be like, oh my God, I've been talking so much about me. What about you? And that's the $1 million opportunity. Because now they're feeling like obligated, like, oh my God, I've been talking this whole time. I need to know about them. You say, oh no, it's no big deal. But what I'm trying to do right now is get started in this industry. And I'm really trying to figure out how to serve people like yourselves. And you take this very low-key approach, like I'm just starting, I'm trying, and now they're going to feel this sense of wanting to help you. Yes, we're manipulating people by learning how to listen more to their needs than the next person. Okay, you got me, right? But at the same time, we're also showing them that if they're going to take a chance on anybody, they want to take a chance on the person that has enough social intelligence to be able to be in situations like this and do well. That's what successful people are looking for, whether they realize it or not. So when they introduce you to their network, or when they entrust you with things that are important and valuable to them, they can feel confident that you won't screw it up. And that's why we want to get them in a position to show that we can demonstrate value by getting them so caught up in themselves that they're like, oh, but what about you? And now they're practically begging you to do something for them. And then that's how you can close that deal. Then once you get to $1 million, then you can document it. You can make it in an impersonal funnel. You can sell it to people who you've never met in person, whose names you will never know. And then you can get to 10 million that way. So I'll give you a very specific personal example of this listening strategy. And what I got out of this, the deal that I closed, is my wife. This is the first day I met her. I saw on her phone that she had her vision board. And at first I asked her, I go, oh, is that your vision board? Can I see it? And when she told me, yeah, you can see it, I already felt like she trusted me, because this isn't something that I would think that she would show anybody. So whatever rapport I had gotten up to that point got me to that, which is great, because if you're asking questions right away, if you ask her something that's a little too much, you can recalibrate and you can ask back down. So she trusted me enough to look at her vision board on her phone. Once I saw her vision board, I started asking follow-up questions on the things in her vision board. Now, I wasn't asking questions because I thought I knew the answer to them. I genuinely was very curious. Why did you put this on your vision board? What does that mean exactly? I think it means this. Am I correct that it means this, or am I off in my thinking? And she was able to explain to me, and I was very excited to hear the answers in her vision board. And then I would ask more follow-up questions. Well, what about this? And what about that? And lo and behold, that led to me getting her number, her actually getting my number, her calling me, us going on a date, and boom. Now we are here today, happily married and in love with each other. And it all started with some very simple questions, by the way, at a seminar, if you will. So if you want to know about where successful people hang out, I live this stuff for a living. So you do it naturally now. At first, it might take some practice, but when you really learn how to listen, I think it's the easiest skill to learn, and it's one of the most valuable skills.